The city of Ayodhya had never known sorrow. For generations, the Raghu dynasty had ruled with Dharma as its spine and the Sarayu River as its witness. King Dasharatha sat on a throne that had been warmed by the greatest kings the world had known, warriors, sages, protectors of the cosmic order. And now his eldest son Rama stands as the heir to all of it. He has just returned from a long journey, having checked every conceivable box of material and social success. He has health, youth and wealth, and the adoration of an empire. Yet the prince who walks back through the city gates appears unrecognizable. Then came sage Vishwamitra, Brahmarshi, former king, one of the fiercest spiritual fires that had ever walked the earth. He came to Ayodhya seeking Rama's help to protect his yajna from the demon forces of Tyadaka and Maricha. He arrived expecting to find a young prince full of the restlessness of youth. Instead he found the court already in quiet crisis. Dasharatha explained his son's condition.
My son has returned from pilgrimage. But something has changed in him that I cannot name and no physician can treat. He performs his duties, he speaks when spoken to, but he is somewhere else. As if the world no longer reaches him. He performs his royal duties with a chilling distance. He mechanically bathes. He attends court and speaks when spoken to. But he views his inheritance with total, heavy indifference. I summoned every available expert to find a cause. Physicians checked for physical fevers, while astrologers scanned the heavens for malefic planetary shadows. He remains still amid this frantic energy. He displays no grief and voices no complaints. He simply observes the world as if looking through a thick sheet of glass. The sights and sounds of the palace fail to move him.
Vishwamitra stood still for a long moment. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. The arrival of sage Vishwamitra changes the perspective of the court. A former king and a figure of immense spiritual authority, he recognizes Rama's withdrawn state immediately.
O king, you call for physicians and astrologers, but what your son carries is not a disease. That is not illness. That is Vairagya, dispassion, the first dawn of wisdom. Do not grieve for your son, Dasharatha. Grieve instead for thousands of princes across this world who will spend their entire lives chasing pleasure and power and never once stop to ask the question that Rama has begun to ask. They are the ones in danger.
A grand assembly was convened, the grandest Ayodhya had seen in years. Not for war, not for coronation, not for the celebration of conquest, but for a conversation. Dasharatha sat on his throne. The princes sat in their places. The ministers and sages filled the hall. Sage Vasistha, the royal preceptor, sat in the honored seat of the teacher. And Vishwamitra, the reason for the gathering, stood to the side watching with the quiet pleasure of someone who knows exactly how this story ends. Rama was invited to speak. He begins by analyzing the mechanics of pleasure.
Kshanabanguramevedan shariram budbudopamam. Tadik prabasamam yovanam kimartam muhyate jana.
This body is utterly transient, like a bubble on water. Youth is like a flash of lightning. For what purpose, then, does a person remain deluded? I have looked at this body carefully, not with disgust, with honesty, and what I find when I look honestly is this. It is a structure of bones held together by sinew and meat, wrapped in skin that we have agreed to call beautiful when it is young and smooth, and ugly when it is old and marked by time. But the bone was always there beneath the skin. The decay was always progressing beneath the surface. We simply agreed not to look. Youth is lightning, brilliant, dazzling, and gone in an instant. The young warrior is magnificent on the battlefield. But magnificence is not the same as substance. A lamp that burns at twice its natural intensity exhausts its oil in half the time. I do not want to be a lamp that burns brilliantly and then goes dark. I want to understand what the light itself is.
Rama is not asking for less life. He is asking what life actually is. And it changes everything that follows.
Here is what I have observed about pleasure. It does not give what it promises. There is a story I keep returning to. A dog finds a dry bone and begins to gnaw at it. As it gnaws, it experiences great pleasure, the sensation of marrow, richness, taste. But the bone is dry. There is no marrow. What the dog is tasting is its own blood, from the cuts the bone makes in its gums. And yet it gnaws more eagerly, because the taste grows stronger. I am afraid that is what I have been doing. I have been tasting my own life force, the natural radiance of consciousness, and attributing it to the objects I pursue. The joy was never in the object. The object was the dry bone. The joy was always mine already from the beginning, and I chased the bone for it. Trying to satisfy desire through sense objects is like trying to put out a fire by pouring clarified butter on it. The fire rises higher. The want grows larger. I have seen men who have everything, kingdoms, wives, armies, gold, who are more consumed by wanting than the poorest man in any city, because they know what more is possible. I do not want to spend my life being pulled by 5 sensory horses in 5 different directions.
Indriyanam prasadena sukham ite abhimanyate. Tat sukham swatmasamvittirna vishayagunodbhavam.
One imagines that happiness arises through the pleasure of the senses. But that happiness is truly the awareness of one's own self. It does not arise from the qualities of sense objects.
Rama then addresses the fleeting nature of human connection. He compares our relationships to birds that roost together in a tree.
Every bird that roosts in a tree at evening flies away at dawn. They do not plan to leave each other. The tree does not reject them. They gather briefly in the same branches, then follow their own paths into the sky. Every being I love is a bird in a tree. Every gathering is an evening's roosting. I have been building permanent structures around temporary unions and calling it home. Friend and enemy in the world are merely a collection of self-interests. Just as a child plays with clay figures of men, exactly that way does time play with all beings. The child is delighted for a moment, careless the next, and eventually the toy is broken and set aside and the child moves on. I think about the great man who came before me in this dynasty. Their names are still spoken. And where are they? Dissolved. Not even dramatically dissolved, just quietly gone, the way light leaves a room when the lamp is extinguished. The world as a whole looks to me like a dream that doesn't know it is dreaming. In a dream, everything feels real. The fear is real, the joy is real, the relationships feel permanent. And then the dreamer wakes, and where is all of it? There is something that watches all of this. Something that is present when I am joyful, present when I am sorrowful, present when I am asleep. Something that is always already simply here. I want to know what that is. Everything else I find I cannot want anymore.
Swapnavat swalpasantoshan pratarbhavi vinashwaram. Kimetad vismayasthanan sansarakhyan mahavan.
The world is a fleeting dream like illusion that cannot grant lasting happiness. So we should not be blinded by its temporary charms.
And sage Vasistha, the oldest teacher in that ancient hall, looked at the young prince and smiled the way a teacher smiles when a student has at last asked the right question.
Because the path is revealed not by the answer you seek, but by the depth of the question you ask. You have done well.
Rama had not lost his way. He had found the beginning of it.